Hey guys, welcome back. I've been on holidays. Ben here from Second Dynasty, all on my lonesome in the office today. We have a lot to catch up on. I've been off for a couple of weeks during my annual leave, or such that it was. I was meant to have 3 weeks off. I think I took 8 days off because I wanted to get a certain vehicle finished before I went on holidays. And I did get to do a little bit of relaxing, but the weather has been shite, really bad. Not a single sunny day. But this week, Tuesday, it was actually sunny, and I actually got to spend a whole 1 hour in my hammock, which I was hoping to do the whole holidays. But fortunately, Baldur's Gate 3 came out, so that was a massive time sink, and I have been spending some time in Fantasyland. So how is everyone today getting in on the chat? Hey, that blasted Summerflange. Hey, Tamsin. Hey, Kathy. It's nice to see some familiar faces. I reckon that there's probably going to be a few less people today, simply for the fact that we haven't been streaming on a regular basis because of the break. Let me know if the microphone's not coming through all right. I have been playing with the settings, but it looks like it is working, at least. I will be checking the chat today. And I have done a send out inviting Traveller fans from several different Traveller Facebook groups to attend if they have questions regarding the small craft campaign that's coming up. And I'm a bit excited about it, actually. This is one of those things when you've been on holidays, you try and recharge and refresh your batteries, and they have been a little bit, at least. And we have some awesome results to show off. We also, hey Justice, we also have next month's Tribes offering to talk about just briefly. So I might just do that before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's session. Albin is working on an animation project at the moment. John has gone back to the United States. And Lieselot is on holidays this week. So it's really quiet in here. Even Hannes has gone shopping. So I'm just by my lonesome. But yeah, let's talk about next month's Tribes. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Tribes is kind of like the equivalent of a Patreon. Only it is on the My Mini Factory platform, which is a sales platform and distribution platform for STL files for 3D printing. So we have a monthly subscription service where you can just throw a $5 and get a new vehicle or whatever. And it's a way to continuously support us between projects, keeps the lights on and whatnot. And hey, Fiery Phoenix and Hazard Rat. So let's talk briefly about next month's offering. So last month we had the Globule, which is John's invention, this pod thing. This coming month we have the Manta Dive Bomber, and that is meant to be a bit of a wordplay. I'm sorry I haven't switched out the background for something more aquatic. But this is a trans-medium craft, a submarine and aircraft in one, basically a torpedo bomber. And thanks to some guidance from the awesome community on Discord, this was meant to be like a twin-seater. We have some external torpedoes. We have this Phantom Menace style propulsion system for aquatic mediums, and we have some kind of jet propulsion. It wouldn't actually be a jet because it doesn't have intakes. It uses some kind of exotic matter for propulsion, but still. And then, of course, we have our cockpits, and yeah, we can fit our pilot miniatures and whatnot. So this one was based on a sketch I did many, many years ago, just this sort of boomerang design. And originally it was going to be called a boomerang until it struck me that maybe it's a transmedia medium craft. So it has some interesting lines, I feel. I can isolate it a bit more so we don't see the background and you can kind of make out some of the details. It has supports for our stands. Sorry, I haven't mesh smoothed this. Some very fake gills and mouth. And the idea would be that although they're not functional, these would open up here and essentially just have a sort of like a sort of bird's beak mouth thing where some more form-fitting torpedoes could launch from. But because of the nature of 3D printing and having a clip system to join things, there's not enough room inside there to actually have proper tubes, at least not on all of them. So it's, you know, do we bother if we can't do all of them? The answer is no. Compromise. We have some slots if you want to put external ones. So I really like the Manta. It was kind of quick and dirty. John did a very basic sketch based on my sketch. And it probably only took me about 3 days to get to the point where we could start test printing, I mean. And of course, on top of everything else, I have actually test printed it. So let's get into close-up mode, and here it is on our stand. I always hold it too close to the camera, I think. So it doesn't quite do it justice in this light. I'll take it off the stand. So we have a sort of flying wing configuration, right? Of course, the cockpits open up. I didn't have the time to do this in clear plastic. The engine at the back, you probably want to stay away from actually rotating the actual propeller because it's quite delicate, but it printed just great. And yeah, we have the fixed engines there instead. And yeah, there we go. Printed and ready for the September release. I can't believe it's already September. I hate that it's already September. As far as the Traveller campaign is concerned, we're probably going to release, I'd say, the first week of October, if I'm being completely honest, because we still need to get everything painted, filmed, build the campaign. Technically, only the launcher is completely 100% finished. Like, it is the case study. So I'm just going to add this. This was the prototype stand from Project Maelstrom. Sorry, Operation Maelstrom. So you can just slot that in. So if you have the stand, you can stick it on your desk like this, which is what I've done. And then we can talk about moving on. And this is what we're moving on to. This is the completed launch. Sorry, I'm taking out the microphone with me. I'm pretty bad about that. It has a ton of functionality for such a small thing. The top comes off. I will just remove them piece by piece. So you have the middle section here. You have... Actually, I'll leave the cockpit on for now. So let's hold this up again. We have the back section, which you just pull off. And in there, it might be a bit hard to see, I've actually fitted to the power plant a light switch. Oops, I think I pulled it in the wrong direction there. Let me just fix that. There we go. You don't get blinded by this, fortunately. So it was never my intention to put a light kit in there, but I just had a couple lying around and I decided to spend a day more putting it in. We have the side of it. It has this nice garage door that slides in there. You have a cargo section, which is 7 squares long. It has a functioning sliding airlock, like so. And this is for the purpose of, you know, if it was docked. It even has, let's see, I don't think this is the complete version. The actual finished version's slightly wider, but it has a sliding ramp that comes out, so passengers can embark and disembark when it's landed. And yes, it can angle. And then if I remove the top, oops, I took the door with it accidentally. Let's slide that back into place. So we can see down into the cockpit. I'm really bad at trying to show stuff off like this, and usually the camera tries to focus on the wrong thing. like my hair. So there you go. I actually put the chairs in from Odyssey, and you have like a fresher in there as well. So this is the basis for all of our sort of small craft, which I did release a document onto our website. I can probably actually share that now that I think about it. Let me see if I go to Second Dynasty, and I think here the first article called Designing the Small Craft of the Third Imperium. Here we go, I'll put it in the chat. And yeah, I just, in that article, I kind of have shared my process. It's not like a complete process. It's missing a couple of steps towards the end because I did make it on the 17th. I only properly completed this, I would say properly yesterday, but properly enough that we have sent off the designs to an American printer agent who are going to print a review copy for Marc Miller and for Seth Skorkowsky. I can't pronounce his last name, or certainly not easily. So yeah, a venerable YouTuber that focuses a lot on traveler products. So the main thing, if you haven't been following along with the project, this ship, aside from all the practical things that we tried to put into it, there's a couple of considerations for why we've done things the way we've done it. And right now I'm in the process of converting the cutter. I've learned a lot from the launch. We're also going to do the pinnace, which is right here. It has some fold-out wings. I don't remember if I animated it. Nope, I did not. But the swing wings will be functional. Let's see, I want to go to 0 degrees there, so it'll be something more like this. I have changed the craft from the classic Traveler designs a little because it had this very, very awkward, ugly tail fin. And so instead I put some vertical stabilizers. I guess they're angled vertical stabilizers, but still I think it looks better and breaks up the craft a little bit more. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit because we're going to be actively converting things. And I've had some great feedback about the launch so far. I'm excited about actually getting a physical print to Marc Miller because the other ships we've done have been way too big to practically do it ourselves and send it to him. This one, the launch, is only 450 grams. By comparison, that is 1/10 of the weight of a Type S. So despite the fact that this is, what, 20 tons? Yeah, the larger you get, the heavier it gets, basically, in dimensions. So it's not like a doubling of length. And then the cylindrical form, too, is quite functional. It's roughly just maybe a centimeter or more wider than a Coke can. I guess a classic Coke can, I should say, because now Coke cans are probably only about 2 inches wide in this country anyway. It's not just a 1-spool ship, Mon Capitan. It is a 2 per 1 spool. So normally you get a kilo of PLA at a time, which is the material we print with on FDM printers. So this one can be done in just a matter of days rather than weeks. It's even about half the weight of a Shuttle Alpha even. So it's meant to be very practical, quick to print. It uses 5 open lock clips, and then all the rest of the clips are actually smaller clips that John designed when he was here that are teeny tiny, but we needed a solution for the cylindrical hulls, right? So that was a major consideration. So aside from that, I got together with Dalton, who is our map guy. I think he has also been very busy with work, but that the Beowulf is almost completely finished. I do need to check in with him. Maybe he will pop up today, we'll see. Let's see. Mark should hire you for converting an additional traveler ship. I hope he likes having a ship in hand. Hire me? What do you mean? Is he getting a couple of minis and posers to go with? I didn't actually think about that. That's a good point. I haven't ordered them. Let's see. Mon Capitan says X-Boat as a question mark. X-Boats would be fairly fun to design. I don't know what the future holds. An X-Boat at least is a very, I think it's 100 tons, isn't it? And it is a stacked ship. So that would be more sensible. But to be perfectly fair, this is what's going to happen. This is our last campaign for the foreseeable future in regards to the Traveller license. Our Traveller license expires next year. You may change my mind if we make a phenomenal amount of money out of it, but in all likeliness, we'll probably just get enough to scrape by to say that, okay, this was just barely profitable, but the big ship thing already was kind of proven with the Beowulf not to really work out. So unless a bunch of new people have gotten 3D printers, considering inflation, the situation in the world at the moment, both in Europe and in the US, I think 65% of our customers are US based. It's not super viable at the moment. I know there's some really loyal fans, but I really don't want to jack up the prices any more than we already have. It already feels a little morally difficult for me. It's kind of like we're in a position, right, where I'd ideally like to sell all of our ships for about half the price of what we currently have to offer them for. But in order to do that, I would essentially need to have, 220% more customers than what we currently do. So it's essentially one of those things where the market's just not big enough, so we kind of have to price based on that. Mind you, I think it's still worth the money because, this is like a 200-part build. Not in the case of the launch, but I mean like the Beowulf is. So you're actually getting a lot of bang for your buck. Hey Dalton, you did turn up, great. So our decisions, when we were talking about, I talked with Dalton at length about what size we were going to go for when it comes to the small craft. Because originally the concept was we do a modular cutter. Makes a lot of sense. You can do different modules as stretch goals. That would work quite well. However, it was sort of pointed out that if we went... Okay, again, let's start at the top. Our license with Mark Miller, with Far Future Enterprises, encompasses Classic Traveller, I think maybe Mega Traveller, I'm not 100% certain. It gets a bit dodgier there. And I would imagine it's the Game Designer Workshop, period. And Traveller 5, which has instead artwork, but otherwise is kind of very light when it comes to the artwork. But if you look at our jump drives and maneuver drives and power systems and whatnot, they are based off T5 art. And we've been able to iterate a little bit and get this out the door a little bit faster. So like this from scratch would not have been viable 2 years ago, judging... Well, we don't know how well this is going to do, but if we use past campaign performance. But I've probably... For all of these ships we're going to build, it's going to be probably about half the time of what for 4 ships of what it would have taken to do the Beowulf, which took me 8 months. And that was with the Type S already designed, which was another 6 months, 7 months before then. So we know the ships are complex. I'm trying to be as authentic as possible to the source material, but any of you guys that are Traveller fans know that there's so many different versions. The aesthetics vary from version to version as well. I prefer an 80s style aesthetic, which is what I've bought to this, so a more classic feel. And then, of course, there is the conundrum of deck plans not matching up with a 3D space. which is why we put all of this into consideration when we started designing the ship. So I spoke to Dalton about it. I spoke with some of my other friends that I played Travelers that I played Traveler with. We actually played it last night for the first time since the summer break, which was nice. And the thing is, with this 3-inch wide hull, I'm saying inch, what I really mean is each inch at scale, 28 millimeters or 25 millimeters, somewhere around there, 1 to 60, approximate 1 to 59 if you want to be exact. It's about the same scale as D&D, where 1 square is 1.5 meters at scale and approximately 5 feet if you are unfamiliar with metric. So there's a little bit of back and forth there because each square is 25.4 millimeters, but it's easier to just say 1 inch square, okay? So, and then by Traveler rules, 2 squares in a quadratic ship, sorry, not quadratic. If you think of 2 1-inch cubes on top of each other, 2 by 2 by 1, that is the equivalent of 1 d-ton, the measurement of volume aboard ships and what the size and class of ships is based upon, right? So a Type S is 100 d-tons, a Beowulf is meant to be 200 d-tons. Our Beowulf was 330 d-tons, but we just followed the T5 maps. We had to extend it a little bit to fit everything in. It's all about like a compromise between what you can physically fit into a space and have it be playable, and the deck plans. And there are many occasions, like I looked at the GURPS Traveler small craft and modules for the modular cutter. There's a wealth of different information there, but the deck plans will not work in a cylinder. And we found out that if I actually calculated the exact internal volume, that if you have a floor that is 3 squares wide, that comes out to 29 square meters, which is 2 d-tons. Approximately, if you assume they're about 14.5. That's a real measurement too. Displacement tons are based on that volume. So we were going off that system. We have a bunch of different widths if you want to check out our past streams. I don't want to reiterate this too much. But we went with this length for a reason. And despite the fact that it's not as wide as a launch from, say, Mongoose Traveler, volume-wise, this is a true correct volume for 20 d-tons. So we wanted to make something that would technically fit with the stats of Mongoose, even though we're trying to be rules agnostic. Stylistically, what we've got to base off is not Mongoose at all. We don't have a license for that. And I'm not saying this is Mongoose. What I'm saying is, since all of the deck plans for all editions of Traveler appear to be off when considering a 3D space, we're making it with the aesthetics of classic Traveler and with the playability so that it can be usable by the most widely used Traveler system played these days, Mongoose 2nd edition. So not saying it is a product of that, it's not licensed for that, but if you do happen to play that system, we're building something that can fit into your game, essentially. But you use the Mongoose rules, we're not providing any rules whatsoever. It is a set piece. So that's the reason why. And then the other thing that we've done is we're building the modular cutter based on 3 squares wide, not the 4 or 5 squares wide that is used in modern Traveler. We could look very briefly at my copy of the most recent High Guard for the launch. and you can see it's 4 squares wide here. Let me zoom in a little bit. Why can I not find the controls? They seem to be in a different place now. I must have updated. Let's see. Yeah, what's going on here? This isn't how it looks. Edit a PDF? No. No. I'm doing everything wrong. Where is the zoom? Please, there we go. Alright. So, let's just try and look at the deck plans themselves. Whoops, I went to a different page. So you can see here that it's 4 wide and 7 long. Ours is 3 wide and 7 long, but technically the correct volume, because a cylinder does not have the same volume as a cube. So technically these deck plans are wrong. Also our airlock's on the other side, but if you have a launch, assuming you're following, well, for one thing, the illustration shows the airlock on the port side, which is where it should be. As with many, look, you can see the discrepancies between the illustration and the deck plan. This has 1 engine, this has 2. This is a common problem with all editions of Traveller, so it is by no means exclusive to Mongoose Traveller 2nd Edition. I do think their ship art's gone downhill from 1st edition, if you're asking me. I think instead stuff is much better from T5, although I understand why Mongoose is more accessible to people. And that is the system that we do play. So you can see here too that they have a ship's launch. This is all based on the same sort of width. Again, the art doesn't match up. And we have a series of different ships that are all based on the same width, and they have essentially been in Traveller since 1st edition. So these ships we're basically doing a representation for in this campaign. And we will re-release the gig. And here we have the modular cutter. Tons of problems here with the size and length. And if you want the details, go into the article that I wrote up. It's tries to explain our decisions, because I know there's going to be some people that are like, oh, it's 3 inches wide instead of 4, or it should be 5, or whatever. Yeah, I get it. But, either we can release a bunch of different ships that will work anyway statistically, or we can do less ships and do even less Traveller product. So this could be our last major campaign. I have some ideas about how we can take the license forward without it breaking our bank, as it has. Namely that we could potentially do much smaller releases on like a tribe style thing, but like we put out some miniatures, we put out some smaller vehicles and whatnot. The sort of thing that you can dress your game up with. And that's the other thing too, obviously it's a massive investment to do a Type S or a Beowulf, but the idea was kind of like these ships are typical player ships, and it could be worth the investment if you're going to use it week after week. So, yeah, a long-winded explanation, but I like the modular nature of the small craft, because you tend to have like a central module, an engine block, and a cockpit, and we could potentially do variants of these. And in fact, we kind of are in the middle of that right now. The modular cutter has the classical half sphere, the launch has a half dome, and the pinnace, and there will be many snickers and laughs about all of this series of ships, because aside from the fact that they're named funnily, they also have a very phallic appearance. Despite being in my 40s, I'm still a bit juvenile. So originally we had this, I was thinking this would be more of a, like a Boeing plane or something, with extra crew seats in the cockpit. It doesn't really fit to the stats, so I'm going to build this out, but we'll make it an alternative cockpit stretch goal, essentially. So you can have a 4-seater. This will be a 2-seater. I fixed a problem with the deck plans where this is another thing that one of the many issues of Traveller. I'm not sure if it's visible. This is a little bit better here with the modular cutter. But let's see if we have anything to illustrate. I think they're pretty good actually with the airlocks in the Mongoose version. But you see this symbol here. This is for an iris valve door. So basically, if you've seen the film Alien, when they're going into the vents and they have their irises like a camera iris opening up, that's how the airlock doors are supposed to mostly work in Traveller. Certainly these ones that look like a wobbly X. And many early deck plans are built in such a way that, obviously when you have an iris door, the actual iris segments need to retreat into the wall. So the size of the circle of the door actually is about twice the size as what you see, because they have to retreat and retract. And many of the deck plans don't take that into consideration, but Mongoose certainly does seem to do that. So the deck plans themselves are quite good in that way. The original plan that we were going off from Classic Traveller, I think it was, or maybe Mega Traveller, I don't know, around about 1982. Dalton, help me. I have no idea which version that would have been by that point. But they had like an extra door here in the airlock. So it was just one square of airlock and then a little room in the middle, and there was an iris here, an iris here, and an iris here, and that can't work. So I got rid of that partition. It's now just an airlock there. And that will actually make it more playable, because otherwise you couldn't have got a miniature into anything more than the front one. These are just mock-ups at the moment of the appearance. So we're looking at doing a launch, ship's boat, modular cutter, and pinnace, and then we'll relaunch the gig. Probably we might even do the two-seater version of the Rampart fighter. Let's see. 81 and 82 are still classic. In any case, the deck plans for the small craft, and maybe you guys are thinking of that, maybe I can look it up again. I know I've done this a gazillion times and I could swear I saved it last time, but small craft Traveller. Let's see, images, and this is the image input. The small craft image is small. So this one that I've found here, I know Dalton has larger ones, and I'm sure they're quite a lot more visible. But here we go. This is the one we're talking about. No, I don't want Pinterest. There's a couple of different designs here. I think it's under me at the moment. So let's see, open image in new tab. There we go, and we can blow it up, and this will be a horrible, horrible thing to look at for you guys. But you can see these are the original deck plans for the modular cutter. It's 4 squares wide. All the other ships are 3. I can tell you each and every single one of them is wrong. Well, now that I think about it, all we need to do is actually go to my website. So if I just go to the article I wrote, which I shared earlier, so we just go down to this, and yeah, I have the image here. So why am I spending all this time explaining it when I have it there? So yeah, this is the Classic Traveller stuff. Let me see, I just need to keep that up to date. So this is the image in question and the deck plans. And yeah, I counted it out here that the cutter shown here should only be 40 tons. The launch, 14 tons. The pinnace, 34 tons. And the ship's boat, 25. So most of them are missing about 5 tons of weight. The cutter is missing 10, although I suspect the volume might be slightly different because it is 4 squares wide, but still. The whole, each square is... each 2 squares are a D-ton, doesn't line up when you have a cylinder. Also, this early art of the modular cutter is quite a lot longer than the more recent stuff. So if you extrapolate this shape onto that, it actually would be longer. Now, looking at where the cutter appears, and this is an argument I made in my article as well, it's supposed, I think it appeared, correct me if I'm wrong, first with the Merc cruiser, the broadsword. And here it's actually labelled as a pinnace, and if you actually count the squares, it's 40 tons here. So this is obviously wrong anyway. The other thing too is, in this map, it's 4 squares on the inside, and on this one, it's like 4 squares from the outside. And this is what I'm talking about, the inconsistency. So I'm never going to please everyone because it's going to be wrong in 3 dimensions. So maybe it's less of a big deal than what I have it as in my head. But, you know, this is the thing. So maybe I should read the chat a little bit. So I did say this would be a Q&A, and we've got about 25 minutes left. So if you guys have questions about this, please do ask. But let's look at some of the chat here. Tuyak says, your rendition of the pinnace reminds me of a ship called Argosy from a space trading card game called Escape Velocity. Feels familiar. Ramming speed. That blasted camouflage says, it seems the mercenary cruiser is mostly empty space. Would make it not as much weight-wise. Again, it's meant to be 800 tons. There is a lot of fuel tankage in there that would save some weight, but honestly, if a 300-ton Beowulf is 5.25 kilos, this thing would be at least 12. At least 12. So possibly as much as 16 kilos. So that is way too heavy to be practical. And aside from that, there's just not enough interest to do a mercenary cruiser at 28 mil. I love you guys. Thank you for supporting me, but you are the most dedicated of my fans. And I just don't see it being commercially viable, not to mention the fact all the time I would have to spend designing it. Dalton says, your quality is far beyond what is expected and goes beyond any Traveller Geek streams. Well, thank you. Michael Tenery says, if this headache is why you are worried about doing Traveller ships, you can set that aside. Okay. I mean, technically, it's just a case of like what I have to pay for the Traveller license. It is extremely reasonable, but it is the difference between being profitable and unprofitable. And I just can't afford to keep going the way that I'm going. I want to do a new ship next year that is a non-Traveller large ship. We haven't done an original product. We've done revamps. They've been somewhat popular. We've done smaller craft. They've worked out okay. But we've found that our most successful campaigns are when we do big ships. So we will do a big ship. Just won't be a Traveller one. But maybe I will make it Traveller compatible. But my goal would be, especially since Starfield's about to come out, and I have an enormous love for the Alien franchise, I would like to do something that's kind of like a hybrid between the Anesidora, which is a ship from Alien Isolation, which is essentially a 50-meter version of the Nostromo, which I think is like 300 meters long otherwise. And, you know, Starfield ships, which also are somewhat similar in appearance. So a new original ship based on that, and I think a smaller campaign for a shuttle to go with that ship would be something ideal for early next year. Of course, we'll continue with Tribes. We might do a Traveller Tribes as a sort of compromise to keep Traveller alive, and you know, we could commission miniatures so that we could have some Zidani soldiers or the aliens from the Traveller universe and whatnot commissioned, along with some smaller classic vehicles. But Traveller also, I feel very constrained by the existing aesthetics. I know I could probably get away with reinterpreting things, but there's also a big part of me that just wants to make something original. So, yeah, it's just what I'm thinking of at the moment. Let's see. I know there are other considerations, but you are fretting about things that few of us are worried about. I bet that's true too. But maybe that's my traveler geek coming out of me, right? Merc cruisers are not wanted. I don't think they are. I think 200 D tons is like the largest you can practically do. And that blasted salmon flange, we know you're joking, but not joking. Let's see. Forget about traveler compatible, make it Viconde compatible. Someone wanting to pitch their own original Alien. Let's see. So, Traveler Tribes. It seems that some people are positive to that. So, I think that might be the way forward. And it's smaller stuff, right? We can commission stuff if we don't have time for it. We work with some wonderful sculptors. And then it's quite manageable. And we could set up the licensing by simply having a separate account on My Mini Factory just for that Tribes. That could be the solution. Let's see. Is there an open license version of 2D6? Yes. It's under the open license. And yeah, there's a new Orc license coming, as Dalton has confirmed. So the existing license is the Mongoose rules, essentially. But it's covered by the old OGL, and a lot of people want to move away from it because Wizards of the Coast cannot be trusted. Although Larian did a great job. Let's just say that. So, we can move away from this and look at the practical stuff of this. So, yeah, if you have questions that my rambling has not answered so far, by all means, leave them here or seek us up on our Discord or, the YouTube comments below if you're looking at this later on. So, we have discussed a number of different things. The modular cutter will have this 15-inch long module. I may do a wider version of it. I'm not saying this is the be-all and end-all of this. I know some people will be upset about the length of the cutter and the width of the cutter. Whilst I really don't want to do a larger cockpit, there is the potential of just sort of fanning out into 5 inches wide instead of 3. This actually has a lowered floor here, which is rather conveniently just a little lower and fits the cargo containers. Of course, this is not practical, but if you wanted to put a standard cargo container in there, you could. That's what the yellow size thing is. It's 3 meters by 3 meters by 6 meters. I've figured out the mechanics of how we make this go together and work so that the modules can be released. Essentially, I will try and demonstrate this as best I can. I still need the mechanics to be figured out, but here is the top of the of the launch, the 20-ton launch, and you can kind of see there is a channel through there. There are let's see, 1, 2, 3, 6 different rectangles or squares. The long thin ones are the new clips. The smaller square ones are for support rods, and there are 6 mil, I think. And the large one is meant to be some kind of crawl space access type consideration that we've left in, mostly for the cutter. It's not necessary. I'm not saying we're going to make it accessible. Just like a thought design-wise of like how do you traverse the ship without going to 0G. It does actually have ladder rungs on the outside there for getting to the other end of the ship with 0G. But not all of these ships also have 2 airlocks. Now, the idea will be, this will obviously be a lot longer. It'll have to probably max out many build plates and be done in 3 sections. But the idea is that the ship underneath, oh boy, underneath the front section here, this section here and this section here, we're going to have some hooks on the inside. Then there will be some way that you can basically split this just 1 inch so that the ship spreads just a little and can detach the cargo modules. And then you can just hook them back together and it will be strong enough that you should be able to use it with just the skeleton. Nothing broke, fortunately, although, you know, they're fairly quick prints. So that's my current plan. Of course, all plans don't survive first contact, so we'll see how that goes. Let's see. Is a 95-ton passenger shuttle possible to do? It is possible, however, it is a different design. I think even... Was that in this article? No, it's not in this one, but it is in... there was a series of deck plans with the small craft, and the shuttle was a larger one of those, but I believe it's a different width. It's a completely different shape. The reason we're able to offer as many craft as we are in this campaign is because of a shared modularity between them. And I figured this is also something that people in the Traveller universe would do. So even, obviously, there's different versions of Traveller with different widths for the cutter. There's room in the universe for a variant where the cutter is longer rather than wider. But... so I may do a 4 or 5 inch one in the end. We'll see. But I would like that to be a very high stretch goal. So it's like, okay, we get support from the community saying, hey, we love this project. I can then reinvest that time into making that variant. So for a very, very high funding level, we could do a full scale wider variant, or as a compromise, do a version where the cargo section is actually wider than the rest of the ship. And I think we could easily go at least an inch wider there. It just needs a bit more clearance, and at the moment it's kind of hard to see unless you've got a grid on. Let's see. So each of the larger white lines here represents 1 inch at scale, or 1.5 meters. So you can see here that everything is aligned so that the landing gear ends up being so that everything's at the right height. So that if you had one of our tiles, for example, with a 1 inch height variation there, that's where you would expect to find the equivalent floor starting from. So it's all sort of designed to fit in into that. So let's see. I'm just putting some lighting on to make it look slightly better. Although, yeah, I don't know if it does or not. So yeah, the shuttle, not this time, and it would have to be interesting enough to, like, there would have to be enough demonstrated interest in it. Let's see. Does anyone have a link to a supplier / Amazon for the 6mm support rods? There you go. Shadow Liger recommended that with the K&S Precision Metals. I think that's the brand I used as well. Different bridge, different diameter, different shape, etc. for the shuttle. So I guess that's just going over the argument for it. A 10 D-ton launch variant versus a larger, incredibly possible, and essentially all it is so if we take off the top again, and we know that each one of these is a D-ton, all we have to do is take out 5 of these squares in the middle, and we have our 10 D-tons. So you would have a cargo area of just 2 squares, then we would start with the engine section. So it would be about this long and bullet-shaped. I mean, it is bullet-shaped anyway, but like it would look more like a traditional bullet. Or I guess a 9mm sort of... Yeah, I'm not great with guns or bullets or anything like that, but... has there been any thought about making a train variant for the cutter? The length of it would make a great sci-fi train car, perfect for heists. I think, yes. In the sense of, like, it won't have like an accordion. It's not designed to be flexible in that way. However, you could certainly put modules back to back and make it much longer. So maybe you want to have an adapter in between. I'm not sure, but yes, that would be possible. The only thing is that the modules aren't really designed to clip together. So yeah, there might need to be some kind of consideration for that. And I imagine it might be hard to, like, you could have it out on a table, and the idea is that each module, it's not shown here yet, but each module will have its own landing gear, because these modules, some of them were designed to be just dropped on a, you know, a planet and used as modules like a command station or, you know, a tracking station or whatnot for a starport. Or I can even imagine in the Traveller universe, some people on, you know, new colonies might use modular cutter modules as, you know, housing or, you know, repurpose them and whatnot. So we certainly would like to do... the modules need to have their own landing gear anyway for when you sort of leave them. And I wanted to create a design that would function both as a sort of space truck, but also with the modular cutter in particular, like a carry-all from Dune, that, you know, the cargo is essentially like the spice harvester, right? So you just drop it off and then it can fly off again. And that's how we see it in a number of illustrations. Let's see. Okay, so we... Marcinko 113 basically is agreeing with that blasted camouflage. Small thrusters externally for the cab to maneuver and connect to the storage area, and the engine pusher for train people could connect to the back and any length. That is okay. Yeah, at the moment it has like a backbone anyway. So there you would have to add RCS to each module section, assumably, but certainly doable. Shadow Liger says, ship go pew pew, bullet shaped. Replace the landing gear with a hover pad for the train variant. You could do that. You could easily just use the same slots to put like Nebuchadnezzar style magnetic pads or whatever they are for the hovercraft, or whatever they call them in the Matrix series. Well, couldn't you just place those doors in between the compartments? Yes. But the problem is, a compartment for the... you can kind of see here that there are two ribs here on the modular cutter, and there's only one in the launch. And the way that they connect is, this is actually one piece, right? And you can see the clip holes for the smaller clips. And for the launch, they match up here. Whereas, because the cargo module of a modular cutter detaches vertically, so I'm making a system so that the actual ship will expand by about 1.5 meters to drop the cargo. But it's not going to be held in place with clips. It will be held in place maybe using hooks. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure exactly how we're going to accomplish it, because there is some engineering challenges. But I think it's well within tolerance. And knowing that the entire launch is essentially a cargo module. It's maybe a little bit longer, but that it's going to be about 0.5 kilo of plastic that it has to hold up. So it's quite doable, considering the lightness of the weight. And if you use metal rods, all the better. But we also need to make that, you know, somewhat compatible. And even the metal rods, they add structural support, but they're not super strong. The huge 6mm versions that we use, I'm not sure this is 6 mils. It feels like it's maybe... Sorry, these ones are the smaller ones. I think they're like more like... let's see. So these are 5 mils, I want to say, but they had like smaller versions of them. I haven't actually tested with rods; they're not necessary at this scale. And we are also looking at doing a 3D printed variant if you don't want to get the external hardware to reinforce it with. So, space truckers, John Wayne says, yes, indeed. Marketing idea, design a module contest. That's not a bad idea. But what's the prize? How do you market it? Any ideas for marketing in that? I'm happy to hear at the moment. We need to get as many Traveller fans involved as possible. I don't think I've mentioned this time around yet either that we're looking and talking to people to do a limited print run. So if you don't have a 3D printer, there is a solution for the launch at least. And then there will be third parties that can print it. But we need to kind of figure out the pricing, and at the moment it looks like we couldn't do it for less than 50 US dollars, and I don't know, we need to look at what our margins are too. Let's see. Presumably, Tamsin says, presumably the tiles for the cargo/passenger compartment will be configurable, plain for cargo seats for passengers, freshers for long transits. I plan to have inserts rather than changing all the modules. I mean, we will have like a windowed module, as you can kind of see out at the back for the crew compartment, and we will have more cargo-y type. But then the actual seats, I think, would just be a flat insert that you put in, rather than, you know, having all of these changes. I think there'll be a couple of like hull variants, and then there'll be a couple of different insert variants, essentially. All right. Dalton says there is the new era variant ship that is 8 modular cutters around a central fuel tank and welded connectors tubes between the cutters, and it's 600 tons. I have seen a double hulled one that's like 140 tons, but Marc Boyverd, or however you pronounce your name, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mon Capitan knows the dangers of mentioning magnets. It's a possible solution, but the bottom line is, the reason they say it's a dirty word is because I'm a broken record about this. It requires third-party materials. I'm happy for optional third-party materials, but making something that requires them is not acceptable to me. So, you know, light kits, possible to install. Although I think from last I read, Zorima's dropped the lighting stuff because it just wasn't turning a profit, which I'm not so surprised about, because we don't sell that many ships either. But you know, there are variants of the other clips that you could use magnets in instead. It's technically possible to adapt that sort of stuff if you want to get more involved. But as far as a design standpoint is concerned, from my perspective, it's not something I am willing to do, just for the fact that it would require you to purchase magnets. Every time you're doing that, you've got to think about the fact that my customers are all over the world. Marc suggested using Coke cans as modules, and whilst I think actually a Coke can is smaller than the launch volume, the problem is the Coke can doesn't look the same from country to country. Here it is taller and more narrow. The size of cans varies from depending on which period of time you're in. So anytime where it's like, okay, buy this specific magnet or whatever, it could mean that, you know, you can't source that in your country or something like that. So especially when it comes to additive manufacturing, like FDM printing, you want to keep everything on the printer if possible, and also without using glue. Let's see. I don't know what the situation is with Zorima. I haven't heard from him probably since the beginning of the year. He did say, I think his website's down, but he did say like you can just reach out to him on Discord and he can still sort it out if you want it done, but that it wasn't worth keeping the website up for. That blasted Samouflage says, I think we need a traveler ship that looks like a saucer that has docking parts for 2 modular cutters. It would be a great enterprise, I think. A slow boat version. We certainly are looking into something like that on our tribes, beginning in October. We have a ship that we're may or may not be basing on a ship like that, although at a much smaller scale. In any case, are there any last questions? It's 4 o'clock here, so we're going to wrap this up shortly. Nice to see so many people coming back, despite the fact that we haven't been up for a long time. We're moving into full production. It looks like it's going to be a lot of a one-man show in regards to this campaign, so I have a lot of work ahead of me. If we have time, I will see about commissioning some traveler miniatures to go along with it, but we do have some time pressures concerned. I'm quite sure that alien stuff is not as hard to get commissioned as people. Something tells me that. Just saying that past the Samouflage, just saying. Yeah, we definitely are in full production now. I love showing off the concept. I'm glad that it worked out as well as it has. I have a table full of parts on my desk of all of these different. This is the thing that I need to set it all up properly. I want to hold this up, but I don't want to break it either. Again, in case you weren't here earlier, I can just show off the cutter with its top down one last time. So we've got all this playable space in here. We have the garage doors. So works quite well. A lot better than it did on the Beowulf concept. And of course the airlock works in the same way, but in the opposite direction. And we also have on the other side, since we do have an area underneath, you have your baggage cargo area. And then of course, last night I fitted this little switch to power the engine. So the battery is cleverly hidden underneath here, and it's just a coin cell with a switch and a 5mm LED. So that's where we're at. Hopefully this was somewhat interesting. I know that a lot of you will have seen this scene before, and a lot of the things I'm working on, it's like not too different from what it originally was a couple of weeks ago. Just it's all printable, and you can kind of see the artistry and complexity that goes into each of the parts. For example, I'll just turn off my snapping. So you've got your, never mind the screens. We don't usually use screens, but we could make the STLs serviceable. So you have like all of these parts that snap in, the front section of the ship. You can see the rings that it's based around, the few open lock clips it uses, support for support rods down the bottom if you want extra support, and up the top if you want support there as well. So you can kind of see how the landing gear all goes together. Technically these can close, although I wouldn't think they will stay closed if you take out the gear. It's complex. It took, as usual, longer to design than I thought it would. But for a ship that I wasn't in love with visually, mostly because of the suggestive appearance of these ships, I think I've found a balance where they look more interesting, and we've brought in that classic Traveller look without it feeling like it's come from the gaming table of the 80s. So, alright, thank you guys for joining me today. Let's see, will there be some form of stand that can hold it up for display? Well, actually, one of the stretch goals will be a cradle, so obviously these ships are being designed to park with a section. They'll be compatible with our other sci-fi tiles, so if you want to simulate the deck plans of a much larger ship, you can do so with those tiles, and the cradle will have as a stretch goal. And I assume you could use that as a display mount, or you just have it with its landing gear. Alright, I should be back next week. Mon Capitan suggesting cheese. I'm looking forward to seeing how you're going to paint yours, Mon Capitan. Thank you for joining me this week. I will be back next week at some point, probably on Friday. We'll try to make it a regular thing again. Hopefully you will see either a completed cutter or a completed pinnace by that time. And yeah, have a great week, everyone. Thanks for coming back. Take care.